Welcome to episode 4 of Castagnari Sander refurb, or in the case of this episode, improvement. My intention is to fit 2 stops there and there in the bass end, one to remove the low note from the bass because they're quite grunty, and one to remove the third from the chord to give you that major minory sound as opposed to the current mostly major, obviously in E minor. I've done quite a bit of preparatory work, design work, and I'll take you through some of the things I've had to think about. Step 1 was deciding how the stops work. You can either pull the stop out to take the low note out, or you can take the stop up to put the low note in. I've gone with the same as the treble end. So in the treble end, if you pull up the stop, you get the extra reed. So on the bass end, I have stop up to engage the low note in the bass, and stop up to put the third into the chord. This also matches with probably how I will mostly play the box, which is with the thirds out and the low note out, because I like the sparser sound. That drives how the mechanism needs to work inside. So that was the first decision. The second decision, I needed to work out where I wanted to put the buttons, the stops, because the best place is really close in here, but it will impinge on the strap. So I've decided more or less where they've got to go, and again that's driven somewhat of the design of what I've got to do inside. So now I'll take the bass end off and we'll have a look inside to see what needs doing. So here we have the bass end. Fairly obviously the block with the big reeds on is the bass block. That's the chord block. If we take them out, we can see the openings that the buttons operate. The good news about Castagnari's is the thirds are those row of holes, and the low bass reeds are those row of holes. So I need to make a shutter that can move up and down and either open or close those holes. One of the problems I've come up against is this gap here is really, this piece here is really very narrow, and I've got to split that in two. One for the sliding side and one for the fixed side of the implants, I'm going to put in for want of a better word. If I had good woodworking tools, it may, or it is possible, because I know how one of my chums does it this way, is to actually route a channel out to allow the slider to run inside a channel in the block. But I have not got the technology to do that, so I'm going to make some sliders. My first plan was to use plywood. This is some 1.5mm modelling ply, and cut some suitably sized pieces, drill holes or cut holes in them, make the sliders. Sliders have to come up through this part of the woodwork here, will need modifying, and the stops will come down through the casework. I faffed around with this for a while using fret saw, little fretting table, and it proved increasingly difficult to cut these holes whilst leaving it's about a millimetre of wood on the outside. It just all split, all the plywood delaminated. Back to the drawing board. I found a thread on melodion.net which recommended plastic. Gina Chrisman had done a similar job to this on her Dino Buffetti. This is 1mm thick PETG plastic. It's flexible, it's easy to cut, you can cut it with a knife. Another advantage over the plywood is it's a nice slidey surface for the block to run on. There's another decision was to go with this plastic work. I then took my 1968 A-level tech drawing and started to make some computer aided design, oh, cardboard aided design in fact. There's the first stab. So that was just to check my layouts and gave me all the right holes. Then had another version which has got the stops on it, or where the stops are going to be. I then started to work out whether I could cut the plastic or how I was going to cut the plastic. Which always see through devices. So I tried variously to cut the holes, and it proved again difficult to cut the holes in the right place and the right size. I then found that I could drill it really easily using a Forstner bit. So the next part of the adventure was to see whether blocking these square holes with round holes made any difference to the volume, to the sound of the box. And somewhere here I should have. So using that template, I went ahead and drilled and cut a set of practice sliders. The two on the outside, although I call them sliders, they slide minimally, whereas the two inside ones either slide down, so stop closed to block off the hole, or they slide up to open the hole. They will operate independently, and the blocks just, if you slacken the screws off a little, happily sit back in place. Oop. Currently set up with the thirds and bass notes out of circuit, for want of a better term. So that all appears to work okay. I now need to move on to make the actual devices, which I'll take you along with that work, and to modify the casework. I'm going to have to remove part where these are going to need to go up through this block. I'm going to have to remove part of that block, and going to have to do something up here to pick up on the sliders for the stops. So this is the finished template. See, it's grown a bit at the top, which is where the slides go up through this part of the casework. They spread out a little to allow me to have the stops as far apart as I want them to be. What I need to do now is cut the plastic out, which is non-trivial. So I've got my template and I've taped it to the piece of plastic. I'm now going to drill all these centre holes for the Forstner bit using my Dremel. There we have a nice set of holes. I'm now going to mark, using my Stanley knife if I can find it, all the outlines. I don't particularly want to cut this up into its 4 constituent parts before I do the drilling, because I think the drilling is easier with more substance, but I'm concerned that this template may get torn apart. So I'm going to use my Stanley knife and steel rule. Right, so now hopefully, if I gently lift the tape, I should have the outline clearly marked. So I'm going to be using this Forstner bit to drill the holes. They need cleaning up afterwards, and I've found you can only really drill one and then you need to clean the bit out because the plastic grips to it. So I'll put you over here. After each hole I have to go in and clean. Right, having drilled all the holes, I'm now going to cut it up into its separate pieces. Okay, so I've now cleaned up all the loose shreddy bits and done a quick test fit, and it all seems to be okay. Next job I've got to do is to cut this support here for the slides to go through. Right, time to put the brave pants on and take my little saw and cut through. Having used my not very good saw, I will now get my not very good chisel and endeavour to remove this wood. It's come out rather better than I thought it would. So we can now see where the slides are going to go up through the block. I'll fit the slides again and we'll have another look. So I've refitted the slides and they do indeed slide. Nearly touching the top, and one lining up with the holes, two not lining up with the holes. Things are looking up. I'll put the blocks back in and see how well they run. So blocks refitted and the stops seem to work quite well. So currently the stops are down, so I should have thin bass and thin chord, which I do. And if I put the stops up, I should get the whole 9 yards. First thing to solve is the fact that these are just a little bit above the surface due to the way Castagnari put the box together. For some reason or other, the bed, wherever we are, that the blocks rest on before they're already raised up is about a millimetre higher than the actual woodwork. So I need to put something underneath these to stop them flapping around. Fortunately it's about a millimetre, so I'll just cut out another piece of the plastic and glue it underneath. Additionally, both ends of mounting are all 1 millimetre too low because of the extra depth I've added, so I will make little offsets for those as well. Back in a minute. So I fitted a plate under there which stops the slides from flapping around in the breeze, and under each of the fittings I fitted another piece of the plastic to raise them all up by the same amount as the thickness of the slides. Just make everything work better. All that's left now is to fit wooden blocks to the tops of the slides, for which I need some araldite, which I haven't got, so that will have to be tomorrow. And then to be big brave boy again and drill holes in the casework, and hopefully it all to line up. It'll be fine.